Chapter 14. Sean had kind of hoped he would get the loan of the Impreza to make the drop. No such luck. Heaton also had a battered blue Daewoo Matiz for these occasions. It had about as much street cred as leg warmers in a perm, and he had to put the seat as far back as it would go to get his long legs in. But the radio worked, so he just settled back and followed the sat-nav directions, thumping out the beat from a CD of old-school rock hits on a steering wheel. The route took him out over Salisbury Plain on well-maintained civilian roads rather than the rutted army tracks he'd got used to. It was getting on for sunset on a late summer evening, so the sun was low and rolling landscape was bathed in orange light. Sean wondered how it was that civvy and military roads apparently had different weather systems. Whenever he was out on exercise, it seemed to be raining. But now the weather was good, the roads smooth, and he found himself simply enjoying being out and about. Until the sat-nav told him where to go. Your destination is on your right. It was a rutted track, overlooked by trees. Sean squinted doubtfully down it. He'd kind of assumed they would meet in a lay-by or something and do a simple switch. Still plenty of daylight for everyone to see something perfectly innocent going on. Other cars passing by. No one watching would think there was anything funny happening. But off the road, in an out-of-the-way place like this, if things went south, he was hardly in the world's greatest getaway car. Thought made him laugh. He'd also eased his nerves. He had met people who'd tried to go back on deals, take the goods, refuse the payment. The ones who survived the reminders soon went out of business for the simple reason that no one would trust them again. A successful operation was based on trust, and Sean had seen it with his own eyes that Heaton was successful. He wasn't being set up. He put the car into gear and headed down the lane. The trees blocked out enough light for the car's headlights to come on automatically. The smell of stale manure started to drift in through the car vents, and he wrinkled his nose. Country smells had been a brand new experience during training. He'd been quite revolted to learn that cows and sheep could just crap in the field and no one picked it up. He'd seen more of the countryside in the last year than he had in his first 16, and he still didn't like it. At the end of the track he drove into a small yard surrounded on three sides by old farm buildings. The skeletal remains of a tractor were rusting in a far corner. He checked his watch. Early by 5 minutes. He turned off the engine and stepped out. Car headlights swung off the road in the distance and disappeared into the tree tunnel. The lights strobed through the trees as the car drew near. Then it was out of the tunnel and rumbling towards Sean. He recognised the silhouette as a Range Rover. He propped himself against the Matiz, tried very hard to look cool. The driver's window slid down smoothly. "So where's the package?" The voice was one of those accentless ones. Well spoken but difficult to trace, giving no real hint of being from any particular part of the country. "In the boot." "Well, it's not doing much good to either of us there, is it?" Sean shrugged and made his way round to the back of his car, popped the boot. He hadn't asked Heaton what the package was. Heaton probably wouldn't have told him if he had. They both appreciated the need for plausible deniability. It was barely the size of a weekend suitcase, so whatever it was, it definitely wasn't sleeping bags. Could be ration packs, he thought. Medical kit, maybe? Wasn't his problem. He reached in and lifted the box. It almost fell into the boot. Shit! He hadn't expected it to be so heavy. He had to use both hands to haul it out. The man climbed down out of the Range Rover and went to open the rear door. "You okay with that?" "Yeah, no problem." Sean carried it over. "Just drop it in here." Now Sean could get a better look at him. He was dressed in dark jeans and shirt. Hair short, age about 30. He was shorter than Sean. Sean guessed he could take him in a fight if the guide tried to stiff him for the payment. Sean had enforced a few debts in his time, and he had never enjoyed it. "Thank you," the man said, as Sean swung the package into the back of the vehicle. "And this is yours, I believe?" He held out a brown envelope. "Yeah, cheers," said Sean, as per orders. He opened it and ran his finger over a large wad of notes. The man snorted, but waited with exaggerated patience. It was all 20s, all used, and 50 of them. So yeah, 1,000 quid. That would all seem to be in order, Sean allowed. Then, as the man shut the rear door, he couldn't resist adding, "Never realised there was such a market for army surplus." "Army surplus?" the man laughed. "Whatever. Give me 5 minutes. I don't want to feel like I'm being followed." So Sean watched him drive off before returning to the Matiz. Seemed even smaller now, even more pathetic having sat in the shadow of the Range Rover. He chucked the money on the passenger seat and squeezed himself in after it. Then he paused, picked up the envelope again, flicked thoughtfully through the notes. Since leaving Burnley, he had been clean. Until this week. And now, he'd broken the law twice. The first time could have just been a relapse. Old, buried habits unburying themselves. But this... he hadn't just broken the law, he was getting paid for it too. That made him a pro. Heaton had said that it wasn't exactly illegal. More of a sort of grey area. Like shit. Legal stuff did not go down in deserted farmyards in the arse end of nowhere. Sean tucked the envelope into her pocket, still thoughtful. Clean sheet, to amateur, to professional, all in 1 week. What lay at the end of that particular path? But he was no longer some hot-headed kid doing it for the rush. This was grown up. He needed the money for a good reason, and so he was earning it. The risk was low compared to some of the other stuff he'd done in the past, and no one was getting hurt. Sean smiled as he eased the Matiz off the track and out onto the road. Perhaps he could have it both ways. The proper job, all above board, with pay and everything else that came with life as a soldier, excitement, adventure, awesome kit to play with, and alongside it, a little bit of law-breaking that wasn't going to harm anybody. Why not? He felt the pocket that bulged with the envelope inside it. Yes, why not? A week later, Saturday afternoon, he was on his way again, working for Heaton, pushing the Matiz up the M3 and onto the M25, then hooking onto the Great North Road and into London. The week in between had been a real ball ache, thanks to Sergeant Adams, filled with relentless PT and checks, right down to kit inspections, all rounded off with a night attack exercise. Now Sean badly needed to spend some time sorting out all the stuff Adams had found wrong with his kit, but that, as Heaton had pointed out on Thursday night when he made the offer, wouldn't take all weekend. And it was an easy journey. He almost knew the way blindfold, right next to Walthamstow. With the Matiz in second gear, first was not just painfully slow, it made the engine squeal like a pig caught in a trap, Sean threaded his way off a main road into a small side street. It was lined with derelict warehouses, blank walls rising up high, old mills waiting in line for some developer to come along and turn them into expensive flats to be sold to celebrities. The street came to a T-junction. Sean turned left and rolled on until he came to what Heaton had described as a door the colour of shit. He climbed out of the Matiz and knocked on the door with a delivery under his arm. It was slightly larger than a shoebox, heavier, but nowhere near as heavy as a box a week ago. Footsteps, then a bolt shifting. The door opened and Sean found himself looking, staring, up at Copper. "It's the delivery lad." Copper's face was one huge grin. "How's it hanging, Shawnee?" Sean finally found words. "What are you doing here?" "Waiting for you, you twat." Copper glanced over Sean's shoulder at the Matiz and smirked. "Don't say a word," Sean warned. "Suits you," said Copper. "Come on." Sean followed him inside. "I'm guessing Josh Heaton didn't tell you I was a customer then," Copper said cheerfully. "No, he didn't." "And how the fuck do you know Heaton anyway? And how did he know that we know each other?" Copper led him down a passage with a scuffed carpet and scabby wallpaper. "How do I know him? Mutual acquaintances. How does he know about us? He asked me if I knew a lad who looked like a daddy long-legs but can't get laid. I said, 'Sounds like Sean Harker.' He said, "That's him." Sean seethed. "How long have you known him for?"
Dunno. A year, maybe?"
A year, Sean thought. That was considerably longer than he had known Heaton. Had Heaton made the connection between Sean and Copper the moment he joined the platoon? So all that "you never said you were in the YOYs" bollocks was, well, bollocks. A way of opening the conversation, that was all. Heaton must have intended to recruit him from the start, the wanker. Sean couldn't deny he appreciated the money. He did not appreciate being played. They'd come to a small room filled with boxes. Another door led off on the opposite side to the back of the building. "The owner lets us store a few things here," Copper said. "And in exchange we throw a few things his way, if you know what I mean." Another of those times Sean was deliberately not going to ask for details. He passed the package across and Copper carried it over to a bench. "Just need to check the goods, mate, okay?" Sean held out his hand. "As long as you don't mind me doing some checking of my own." Copper grinned and pulled an envelope out of his coat. He placed it in Sean's hand with exaggerated care. "Go wild." Sean went to lean against a wall and shuffled quickly through the notes while Copper opened the box up on the other side of the room. Sean had just got to the 800s when he was suddenly distracted by a sound he both recognized and couldn't understand. The smooth, metallic slick and click of a pistol being readied. He looked over at Copper with wide eyes. The big lad was hunched over the box and the sound had come from him. Sean was sure of it. But he must have been mistaken. Heaton hadn't said anything about guns. And he, Matt and Copper, they never used to have guns. Then the sound came again, and when Copper raised his right hand, Sean immediately recognized the silhouette of what he was holding, and he wished to God that he didn't. Copper was holding a Glock 17 Gen 4 pistol, and it was Sean who had put it in his hand.